Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. Stay tuned for the next part, where Sarah's unexpected encounter with Kevin leads to something far more life-changing than either of them could have imagined. The next morning, Sarah sat at her small kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee as she stared out the window, the world outside still shrouded in the early morning mist. She couldn't shake the feeling of embarrassment from last night, her hasty exit from the cafe. It was a simple mistake, but somehow, it felt like so much more. Her phone buzzed on the table, snapping her out of her thoughts. She picked it up, expecting it to be a message from Jenny, but it wasn't. The message was from an unknown number. Hi Sarah. This is Kevin. I know it was a mix-up last night, but I'd love to see you again. Would you be interested in coffee? I promise I'm not a blind date disaster. Sarah froze, the words staring back at her, her heart skipping a beat. Was this really happening? She set the phone down for a moment, debating what to do. It had been a strange, uncomfortable encounter, but something about Kevin's message, the sincerity in his words, made her pause. Could she really go back there, after the embarrassment? She thought about it for a while, then, with a sigh, typed her reply. Okay, coffee sounds nice. She hit send, the nerves creeping back in as she felt the weight of her decision. A few minutes later, her phone buzzed again. Great. I'll see you at 10:30, same place. I'll be the guy with the awkward smile. Sarah couldn't help but smile at the message. The awkward smile, she remembered that. It wasn't much, but it made her feel like he wasn't just another guy pretending to be someone he wasn't. He was real. She put her phone down and took a deep breath. Maybe this would be awkward too, but at least she wouldn't have to face it alone. She wasn't expecting fireworks or love at first sight, but there was something about Kevin that intrigued her. Maybe it was the kindness in his eyes, the way he listened to her the night before, or the fact that he wasn't afraid to admit when he was confused. She stood up, ready to face whatever would come next. By the time she arrived at the cafe, her nerves had settled. She spotted Kevin right away, sitting in the corner with a cup of coffee in front of him. He looked up when she walked in, and for a moment, their eyes met. He gave her a small, genuine smile, and Sarah felt the tension in her chest ease. She walked over and sat down, her hands resting on the table, her fingers fidgeting with the napkin. Hey, Kevin said, his voice light and casual. I'm sorry about last night. I should have said something sooner. Sarah waved him off. No, it's okay. I should have double-checked. I wasn't expecting anyone to look that, well, polished. She chuckled, and Kevin laughed too, the sound warm and easy. The awkwardness was starting to fade. They talked for a while about their lives, their work, their families. Sarah learned that Kevin had been traveling a lot for work lately, but he didn't mind it. He liked the challenge, the unpredictability of it all. He also mentioned how hard it was for him to make real connections with people, especially with his work in tech. It's all so transactional, he said, stirring his coffee absent-mindedly. Everyone wants something from you, and it's hard to know who's being real. Sarah nodded. I get that. I mean, I don't work in tech, but I know what it's like to feel like you're just there. Like people don't see you for who you are, just what you can do for them. Kevin looked at her, his expression softening. Yeah, exactly. I don't know. Maybe that's why I liked talking to you last night. You didn't ask anything from me. You just talked. It was refreshing. Sarah felt a warmth spread through her at his words. She had no idea that just being herself could have such an impact. Maybe this coffee date wasn't so bad after all. They spent the next hour chatting, the conversation flowing easily between them. Kevin shared more about his childhood, his parents, and how he had been raised to always be the best, to push for success no matter the cost. Sarah told him about her family, her struggles with teaching, and how she'd always wanted to open her own art studio, but never thought she could. She realized as she spoke that it had been a long time since she'd admitted that dream out loud. She felt like she was being heard in a way she hadn't been in years. When they finally finished their coffee, Kevin looked at her, his eyes thoughtful. I know we're not exactly in the same world, but I'm glad we met, he said. Sarah smiled, feeling a flicker of something she hadn't felt in a while. Hope. Maybe it wasn't love, but it was something. A connection. And that was a good start. They stood up, and Kevin reached for his wallet to pay. "Let me cover this," he said. "It's the least I can do after, sitting in the wrong seat last night." Sarah laughed, the tension from the previous evening finally gone. "Fine, but only if we do this again sometime. I need to redeem myself for that disastrous first impression." Kevin smiled, the awkward smile she'd seen before. "Deal." They exchanged a brief but meaningful glance before Sarah stepped out of the cafe. As she walked down the street, she couldn't help but feel a spark of excitement for what might come next. Maybe this wasn't just another blind date. Maybe it was the beginning of something real. Days passed, and the memory of that awkward first meeting between Sarah and Kevin began to fade. In its place, a new connection had started to form. They texted every few days, sometimes just to check in, sometimes to share something funny that had happened. It wasn't anything intense, just a quiet, comfortable bond that was slowly taking shape. Sarah found herself looking forward to his messages, smiling when his name popped up on her phone. It was something simple, but it made her feel seen in a way she hadn't expected. She didn't expect anything grand to come from it, but there was a part of her, deep down, that hoped it might. That hope was subtle, but it was there. Kevin wasn't like anyone she had met before. He wasn't trying to impress her or put on an act. He was just himself, and that was something she had come to appreciate. One afternoon, as she sat at her desk grading papers, Sarah's phone buzzed again. It was a message from Kevin. "Hey, I was thinking of heading to that art gallery downtown this weekend. Would you be interested in coming along? No pressure, just a casual thing. Thought you might like it." Sarah stared at the screen for a moment, her heart skipping a beat. An art gallery? She hadn't been to one in years. It was exactly the kind of thing she used to love, but had pushed aside in recent years. She hadn't even realized how much she missed it until now. Her fingers hovered over the screen as she debated whether or not to respond. It wasn't a date, he had said, but something about the invitation felt different from the usual casual plans she had made with friends. There was a quiet sincerity behind it, something real. After a few seconds, she typed her reply. "That sounds really nice. I'd love to join you." She pressed send before she could second-guess herself. When the weekend arrived, Sarah found herself standing in front of the art gallery, waiting for Kevin to arrive. It was a beautiful day, and the gallery's tall windows reflected the clear blue sky. As she stood there, she couldn't help but feel a flutter of nervousness. She hadn't seen Kevin in a few days, and though their messages had been lighthearted, this felt like a bigger step. It felt more personal, somehow. Kevin arrived a few minutes later, dressed casually in a button-up shirt and jeans, his usual laid-back look. He smiled when he saw her, and for a moment, Sarah felt a sense of comfort wash over her. He didn't try to impress her or act overly charming. He just greeted her as if they had been friends for years. "Hey, Sarah," he said with a smile. "Ready to check out some art?" "Yeah, let's do it," she replied, returning his smile. As they walked through the gallery, Sarah found herself more and more at ease. They talked about the paintings, discussed what they liked and didn't like, and laughed at some of the stranger pieces. It wasn't about the art itself. It was about the conversation, the ease with which they connected. There were no expectations, no pressures, just two people enjoying the simple pleasure of each other's company. After a while, they paused in front of a large abstract painting. Sarah studied it for a moment, trying to interpret its chaotic lines and bold colors. She turned to Kevin, who was watching her with a thoughtful expression. "What do you think?" she asked. Kevin shrugged slightly, a playful smile tugging at his lips. "I'm not really an art critic, but I think it's loud. I kind of like it, actually. It's like it's trying to say something, but it's not quite sure what." Sarah chuckled. "That's one way to put it. I think I get it, though. It's messy, but it feels real. Like there's something raw about it." Kevin nodded, his gaze softening. "Yeah, exactly. It's like it's just there, not trying to be anything else. It's not perfect, but maybe that's why it works." The moment hung in the air for a moment, and Sarah felt her chest tighten. She realized that it wasn't just the art that felt real. It was the way Kevin saw the world. It was how he accepted things as they were, without trying to change them or force them into something they weren't. It was the same way he had accepted her, just as she was, without trying to make her fit into any mold. She felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she was exactly where she needed to be, with someone who wasn't perfect, but who understood that perfection wasn't necessary. They spent the next hour exploring the rest of the gallery, but the moment by the abstract painting stuck with her. It wasn't just the art, it was the connection between them, the way they saw each other and the world. Sarah had spent so long building walls around herself, keeping everyone at a distance. But with Kevin, she felt those walls slowly start to come down, piece by piece. As they walked out of the gallery, the sunlight streaming through the windows, Sarah realized that this wasn't just another date or another casual outing. It was the beginning of something real, something she hadn't allowed herself to believe in for a long time. Kevin turned to her as they reached the door. "I'm glad you came today," he said, his voice soft. "I had a great time." Sarah smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest. "Me too," she said, her voice steady. "Thank you for inviting me." Kevin smiled back, and for a moment, they just stood there, looking at each other, the unspoken connection between them growing stronger. It wasn't a love story yet, but it was something else, something that felt just as meaningful. Stay tuned for the next part, where Sarah and Kevin face a turning point that will change the direction of their relationship. The following week, Sarah found herself thinking more and more about Kevin. Their coffee date had been simple, but something about it had stayed with her. There was a quiet comfort in his presence, something she hadn't felt in a long time. She'd always been cautious about letting people in, especially after her past disappointments. But with Kevin, it felt different. She couldn't explain it, but she found herself looking forward to the moments they shared, even if it was just casual texts or sharing thoughts on a painting they'd seen together. It was Friday evening when she got the text from Kevin. "Hey, I'm in town this weekend for work. Would you like to grab dinner tomorrow night?" Sarah smiled as she read the message. Dinner. This felt more like a date now, but it wasn't something that scared her. She felt a small flutter in her chest, an excitement she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time. Without hesitation, she replied, "Sounds great. Where should we meet?" Kevin texted back quickly, suggesting a small Italian restaurant that was known for its cozy atmosphere. The kind of place that made you feel like you were in a different world, away from the busy city. Sarah had heard of it, but had never been. She liked the idea of something simple and unpretentious. The next evening, Sarah arrived at the restaurant a little early. She stood outside for a moment, taking in the warm glow from the inside. The lights were soft, and the scent of fresh bread and garlic wafted out into the street. It felt like the perfect setting for the kind of evening she'd been hoping for, even if she wasn't sure exactly what she was hoping for. She walked inside and was immediately greeted by a hostess who led her to a small table by the window. As she sat down, she found herself fidgeting with the silverware, nervous but excited. Kevin had become a regular part of her thoughts, but this was the first time they'd be spending time together in a more formal setting, and she wasn't sure what to expect. Would it feel like their last meeting, easy and comfortable? Or would there be more pressure now that it was clearly a date? A few minutes later, Kevin walked in, looking effortlessly casual in a navy blue shirt and dark jeans. His hair was a little tousled, and there was a light in his eyes that made Sarah's heart skip a beat. He smiled when he saw her, his expression warm and genuine. "Hey, Sarah," he said, sitting down across from her. "I hope you're not too hungry. I heard the portions here are huge." Sarah laughed softly, feeling the tension from earlier melt away. "I'm starving, actually," she said. "So, I'm excited to see what they've got." The evening flowed smoothly from there. They talked about their work, their interests, their families. It wasn't groundbreaking conversation, but it was real. Every word exchanged felt like a small step toward something more. They found common ground in unexpected places. Kevin, with his tech background, had a deep love for classic literature, and Sarah, a teacher who often felt disconnected from the world outside her classroom, had a surprising interest in startups and entrepreneurship. As the night wore on, Sarah found herself relaxing more and more, no longer thinking about what she was saying or how she was coming across. She felt like she could just be herself. Kevin didn't seem to expect anything from her. He wasn't trying to impress her with stories about his accomplishments, but rather shared small, personal stories about his childhood and growing up with two older brothers who always pulled pranks on him. "I still can't believe they convinced me to eat that ghost pepper when I was 12, Kevin said, laughing. "I thought I was dying for hours." Sarah chuckled, shaking her head. "That sounds like something my brother would do. He's always been the prankster of the family." They laughed together, and for a moment, the rest of the world seemed to fade away. It wasn't about the food or the place. It was about the connection they were building, one story at a time. As the meal came to an end, Kevin surprised her by asking, "So, what's the one thing you've always wanted to do but haven't gotten the chance yet?" The question caught Sarah off guard. She hesitated for a moment, unsure how to answer. She had dreams of opening her own art studio, of creating something meaningful outside of teaching, but she hadn't allowed herself to think about those dreams in a long time. They felt too far out of reach, too risky. But as she looked at Kevin, sitting there with his warm smile and kind eyes, she realized she hadn't talked about her dreams in a long time either. "I've always wanted to open my own art studio," she said quietly. "But I've never thought I could make it happen. There's always been something holding me back. Fear mostly. Fear of failure, I guess." Kevin didn't hesitate. "You know, if you ever decide to go for it, I think you could do it. You have the passion, and that's more than half the battle." Sarah felt a lump form in her throat at his words. She had always been told to dream big, but somewhere along the way, she'd stopped believing it was possible. But with Kevin's encouragement, something shifted inside her. Maybe it wasn't as impossible as she had once thought. They finished the meal with dessert, a shared slice of tiramisu that was the perfect end to an evening that had far exceeded Sarah's expectations. As they left the restaurant, Kevin walked her to her car. "Thanks for a great night," he said, his voice soft. "I really enjoyed this." "Me too," Sarah replied, her heart light. Before she could open the door, Kevin stopped her with a gentle hand on her arm. He looked at her with that familiar warmth in his eyes. "I know we've only just started getting to know each other, but I think this could be the beginning of something special." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. Maybe it was the beginning of something real, after all. Something she wasn't quite ready to name yet, but knew she didn't want to let go of. Stay tuned for the next part, where Sarah begins to see the potential for more with Kevin, and her life starts to shift in ways she never expected. The following days felt different for Sarah. She woke up with a sense of anticipation that she hadn't felt in a long time. Every time her phone buzzed, she would check to see if it was a message from Kevin. And when it was, her heart would skip a beat. It wasn't anything big, just little texts throughout the day, asking how her class went, sharing a funny story from his work, or sending a picture of a new tech gadget he was excited about. But it felt like something real was building between them, something she hadn't expected, but was slowly beginning to embrace. It had been a week since their dinner, and tonight, Kevin had invited her to a charity event he was attending. Sarah wasn't sure what to expect. A gala? A business gathering? But Kevin had insisted, saying it would be a great way for them to spend time together outside of their usual coffee shop meetings. "It's a casual event," he'd said. "You'll enjoy it, I promise." Sarah had spent the afternoon getting ready, a small nervous excitement bubbling up inside her as she chose a dress. She didn't want to overdo it, but she also wanted to look nice. After all, this wasn't just another casual hangout. It felt different. It felt more significant. When she arrived at the venue, she was immediately struck by how glamorous it all looked. The event was being held at a grand hotel, its massive glass doors opening into a large ballroom filled with glittering chandeliers and well-dressed guests mingling with glasses of champagne in hand. Sarah felt a momentary wave of doubt wash over her as she stood by the entrance, unsure of where to go or who to talk to. This wasn't her usual environment. But as soon as she spotted Kevin across the room, talking to a group of people, she felt a sense of calm. He looked up and caught her eye, and a smile broke out on his face. He excused himself from the conversation and made his way toward her, his hand outstretched in greeting. "Hey, Sarah. I'm so glad you came," he said, his voice warm and welcoming. "Thanks for inviting me," Sarah replied, trying to hide the nervousness in her voice. "This is amazing. I wasn't sure what to expect." Kevin laughed softly. "I know it's a little fancy, but we'll keep it casual. Let's grab a drink first. Then I'll introduce you to some people." They made their way to the bar, and as they sipped their drinks, Sarah began to relax. Kevin was easy to talk to, even in this unfamiliar setting. They talked about everything: his work, her students, their favorite books, and even their favorite movies. She found herself laughing more than she had in weeks, feeling completely at ease with him. As the night wore on, Sarah noticed something that made her heart skip a beat. Kevin was talking to one of his business associates, a man who looked like he was in his 50s, with a sharp suit and a tight grip on his glass. Kevin introduced Sarah, and the man smiled politely, but there was something about the way he looked at her, like he was sizing her up. Sarah felt a flicker of discomfort, but Kevin, sensing her unease, smoothly steered the conversation in another direction. As the man wandered off to greet someone else, Kevin turned to Sarah with a playful grin. "Don't mind him. He's a little intense." Sarah smiled, grateful for the distraction. "I figured. Everyone here looks so polished. It's a little overwhelming, to be honest." Kevin nodded, his expression softening. "Yeah, sometimes it feels like I'm just playing along with it all. But I'm glad you're here, Sarah. Really." They moved to another part of the ballroom, where a live band was playing soft jazz. Kevin's hand brushed against Sarah's, and for a moment, they both stopped, caught in the quiet intimacy of the moment. Sarah looked up at him, meeting his gaze, and she realized something. This wasn't just another date. This wasn't just two people spending time together. There was something deeper here, something real that had grown between them in the time they'd spent together. Kevin seemed to sense it too. His voice lowered slightly as he spoke. "Sarah, I know this might sound sudden, but I've really enjoyed getting to know you these past few weeks. I think there's something special here." Sarah's heart fluttered at his words. She didn't know what to say, but she didn't need to. His sincerity was enough. "I feel the same," she said quietly, her voice almost a whisper. "I wasn't expecting any of this, but it feels right." Kevin smiled, his eyes softening. He took a step closer, his hand resting gently on her arm. "So what do you say? Want to dance?" Sarah's smile widened, and for the first time in a long time, she felt completely at peace with where she was in life. She didn't have all the answers. She didn't know where this would lead. But in that moment, she didn't need to know. All she needed was to enjoy the night, the music, and the connection that was slowly blossoming between them. They danced through the rest of the evening, surrounded by the soft glow of the chandeliers. And for Sarah, it felt like the beginning of something new, a future she hadn't dared to dream about until now. Stay tuned for the next part, where Sarah faces a decision that will test her new relationship with Kevin, and her future takes an unexpected turn. The following week, Sarah woke up to a quiet Sunday morning, the soft light of early autumn streaming through her window. She felt a strange sense of calm. After the charity event with Kevin, things had shifted between them. What had started as casual coffee dates and simple conversations was slowly becoming something more. She couldn't quite place it, but there was a deep connection between them that felt real, like something that could grow into something lasting. Yet, even as Sarah felt her walls slowly coming down, there was a lingering sense of doubt. She had been hurt before, and part of her wondered if this was too good to be true. Could she trust herself to let someone in again? Could she trust Kevin, who seemed to have everything together while she was still sorting out her own life? She spent the morning reflecting, sipping her coffee, and looking out over the small park near her apartment. The park was quiet this time of day, and the leaves on the trees were just starting to turn golden yellow. She loved it here, the peace of it all, the sense of simplicity. It was a good place to think, to feel grounded. Later that afternoon, as she was about to head out for a walk, she got a text from Kevin. "Hey, are you free this evening? I was thinking about grabbing dinner. I know we've been busy, but it'd be nice to spend some time together again." The text made her smile. It wasn't that she didn't want to see him. Quite the opposite. But a part of her was nervous. She hadn't expected Kevin to be so persistent. Not that it was a bad thing. She appreciated his effort, but she wasn't used to someone making an effort like this. Her past relationships had often been filled with misunderstandings, emotional distance, and the feeling that she was always the one giving more. Could this be different? Taking a deep breath, Sarah typed back, "Sounds great. I'd love to. Where do you want to go?" Kevin responded almost immediately. "How about that little Italian place we passed by last time? The one by the park. I've been craving their pasta." "Perfect," Sarah replied. She looked at the clock. They'd be meeting in a few hours, and she had a lot to think about before then. As evening approached, Sarah stood in front of her mirror, picking out an outfit. She didn't want to overthink it, but there was a part of her that wanted to look good, to make a good impression. This wasn't just dinner. This was another step forward, another moment where she had to decide if she was truly ready to let someone into her life again. When she arrived at the restaurant, the familiar scent of garlic and fresh herbs greeted her. The place was cozy, intimate, and it reminded her of their first meeting. Kevin was already there, waiting for her at a corner table. He stood when he saw her, offering a smile that made her heart flutter. There was something about him that made her feel at ease, but also something about him that made her feel exposed in a way she hadn't expected. "Hey, Sarah," Kevin greeted her, pulling out her chair. "I'm glad you could make it. You look amazing." Sarah smiled, trying not to blush. "Thanks, Kevin. You look good too." They ordered drinks, and the conversation started easily. They talked about their day, their week, and the little things that had made them laugh. It wasn't heavy, it was light and natural, and Sarah couldn't help but feel the connection growing stronger. She noticed how comfortable she felt around him, how he was attentive but not overwhelming, how his smile made her feel like everything would be okay. But as the evening went on, there was a subtle shift in the conversation. Kevin's tone changed slightly, and Sarah could tell he was about to ask something important. "You know," he began, taking a sip of his wine, "I've been thinking a lot about us, and I wanted to know how you're feeling. I know we've been taking things slow, but I think we've got something here. I just don't want to rush you or make you feel pressured, but I also want to be honest with you." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected him to be so direct, so open about his feelings. She had thought they were both just enjoying the moment, taking things day by day. But now, Kevin was looking at her with such intensity, with a vulnerability that made her feel both nervous and hopeful at the same time. "I've really enjoyed getting to know you, Sarah," Kevin continued, his voice steady but earnest. "I don't know what the future holds, but I'd like to see where this goes. I think you're someone special, and I don't want to let that slip away." For a moment, Sarah couldn't find the words. She had wanted to say something like that herself, but hearing it from Kevin, hearing him speak so openly about what he felt, it was a lot to take in. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft. "I've been thinking about that too, and I'm not used to someone being so honest with me. I don't know where this is going either, but I'm willing to see where it leads. I think we're both looking for something real." Kevin smiled, his expression softening. "That's all I want, Sarah. Something real." They sat there for a moment, the air between them filled with something unspoken, something that felt like a promise. It wasn't love yet, but it was something strong, something worth exploring. As the night went on, they talked more, laughed more, and shared more of themselves than they had before. Sarah realized that, for the first time in a long while, she wasn't afraid of what might happen next. Whatever it was, she knew it would be worth it. Stay tuned for the next part, where Sarah and Kevin face a challenge that will test their growing relationship, and Sarah is forced to confront her deepest fears. In the days that followed their honest conversation, Sarah felt a shift in her heart. It wasn't just the gentle spark between her and Kevin anymore. There was a deeper feeling growing inside her, one that she hadn't fully allowed herself to recognize before. She was starting to trust him, truly trust him. Yet, despite this, a small voice inside her kept questioning whether she was ready to let go of her past fears, to truly open up her heart again. The last few years had taught her to be cautious, to guard herself from the kind of hurt she had felt before. But with Kevin, things felt different. One evening, as she was driving home from work, Sarah's phone rang. It was from Kevin. "Hey, Sarah, do you have a minute? I need to talk to you about something." His voice sounded a bit off, as if something was weighing on him. "Of course," she replied, her curiosity piqued. "What's going on?" There was a pause on the other end. Then Kevin spoke again, his tone more serious now. "I've been offered a promotion at work, but it requires a major move. They want me to relocate to Chicago, and it's all happening pretty fast." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected this. The thought of Kevin leaving so suddenly threw her off balance. They hadn't talked about the future, at least not in any concrete terms, but the idea of him moving so far away felt like a heavy weight pressing on her chest. "Wow, that's a big change," Sarah said, trying to keep her voice steady. "When do you have to decide?" "It's a tight deadline. They want an answer by the end of the week," Kevin explained. "I haven't said yes, and I'm not sure what I should do. Part of me feels like I should go for it. This is a big opportunity. But another part of me doesn't want to leave here, not when things are just starting to feel real with us." Sarah felt a wave of emotion rush through her. She understood the pressure Kevin must be feeling, the excitement of career advancement mixed with the uncertainty of where that would take his personal life. But she also realized that his decision could affect the path they were starting to walk together. "I get it," Sarah said, her voice softening. "This is a huge opportunity for you. But I also understand if you're torn about it. I don't want to pressure you into any decision, but if it means something to you, I think you should go for it. You've worked so hard for This. Kevin was silent for a moment, as if processing her words. I appreciate that, Sarah. I really do. But I don't know if I want to make this decision alone. I've been thinking about us, about where we could go from here, and I don't want to lose what we're starting. Her heart fluttered at his words. This was exactly what she had been afraid of, the possibility that one of them would have to let go of something important. She thought of the connection they had, the warmth between them that had only grown since their first meeting. But she also knew that she couldn't hold him back from something that could be life-changing for him. Kevin, she said, her voice trembling slightly. Whatever happens, I want you to do what's best for you. I don't want you to stay for me if it means you'll regret it later. I don't want either of us to feel trapped. Kevin's voice softened. Sarah, I'm not asking you to hold me back. I just want to know if you'd be willing to try, to see where this could go. Whether I'm in Chicago or here, I don't want to lose what we have. For the first time, Sarah realized how much she had already invested in this relationship. She hadn't expected to feel this deeply, this quickly. The thought of Kevin leaving made her heart ache, but she knew that she couldn't hold him back out of fear. What they had was worth fighting for, and maybe, just maybe, there was a way for them to figure it out, no matter the distance. I'm willing to try, she said softly. I think we can make it work, no matter where you are. But only if you're sure this is what you want. Kevin let out a breath, a mixture of relief and uncertainty in his voice. I'm sure. I want to give this a real chance, Sarah. But I need to know that you're on the same page. Sarah closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. She didn't have all the answers. She didn't know what the future held for them, but for the first time in a long time, she was willing to take a leap of faith. She couldn't let her fears control her anymore. Whatever came next, she was ready to face it with him. I'm on the same page, she said, her voice steady. Let's see where this takes us. Stay tuned for the next part, where Sarah and Kevin face the challenges of long distance, and their relationship takes a new turn. The days that followed Sarah's conversation with Kevin were filled with a quiet uncertainty. Kevin had made his decision. He would accept the promotion and move to Chicago. The news had hit Sarah harder than she had expected. She had spent the last few weeks imagining a future with him, a future that suddenly seemed so fragile. The thought of long distance was daunting. She wasn't sure how they would make it work, but the idea of losing him felt even more difficult to bear. They continued to text and call every day, trying to keep their connection alive despite the physical distance between them. Sarah found herself missing him more than she cared to admit. The small moments, his laugh, the way he listened to her, the way he looked at her with such sincerity, were the things she realized she had come to cherish the most. And yet, despite the growing closeness they shared, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that their relationship was hanging in the balance, teetering between hope and uncertainty. One evening, as Sarah was sitting on her couch, scrolling through her phone, she got a text from Kevin. I'm heading to Chicago tomorrow. I wish I didn't have to leave. I feel like we've just started something, and now it's like we're starting over. Sarah's heart sank as she read the words. She had known this moment was coming, but it didn't make it any easier. She replied quickly, I know. It's hard for me too, but I don't want you to stay here because of me. You've worked so hard for this. There was a long pause before Kevin responded. When the message finally came through, it was short but sincere. I want to see you before I leave. Let's have dinner tomorrow. Just the two of us. Sarah's chest tightened at his words. She knew what this dinner would mean. It was a moment of finality, a moment where they would both have to face the reality of their situation. She agreed, of course, wanting to make the most of the time they had left together. The next evening, Sarah met Kevin at the small Italian restaurant they had visited a few weeks ago. It felt like the right place, a space where they could be themselves, away from the noise of the world. The familiarity of the place brought a sense of comfort, but it also reminded her of how quickly things had changed. They sat at the same table by the window, and for a moment, neither of them said anything. Kevin was the first to break the silence. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about us not being able to do this long distance. And I get it. I really do. It's not easy. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. I don't know what the right choice is, but I know I want to be with you. And I don't want this to be the end. Sarah's heart raced. She hadn't expected him to say that, not when they were facing such an impossible situation. Kevin, she began, her voice trembling slightly. I don't want to lose you either. But I also don't want you to give up on something that could change your life. You've worked so hard for this opportunity. I can't ask you to stay just for me. Kevin looked at her, his eyes filled with uncertainty. But what if we could make it work? What if I didn't have to choose between my career and you? Sarah's mind raced as she processed his words. She had been so sure that their relationship would have to end once he moved. But Kevin's words left her questioning everything. Could they really make it work? Could they find a way to stay connected, despite the distance? I don't know how it would work, Kevin, Sarah said softly, looking down at her hands. But I'm willing to try. I don't want to just let go of this, not when I feel like we've just started to figure things out. Kevin smiled, the tension in his face easing. I don't know what the future holds, Sarah, but I'm willing to give it a shot. I want to make this work, no matter how far away we are. They spent the rest of the evening talking, not about the logistics of long distance or the challenges they would face, but about the things that mattered most. About their hopes, their dreams, and what they wanted from the future. Sarah realized that it didn't matter how far apart they were, it was the connection they shared that would keep them going. As they stood up to leave, Kevin took her hand gently in his. No matter where I go, Sarah, you'll always be a part of my life. I'm not giving up on us. Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as she looked at him, her heart full. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, she felt a deep sense of peace. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Stay tuned for the next part, where Sarah and Kevin navigate the challenges of long distance, and their relationship takes an unexpected turn that neither of them could have foreseen. Months passed, and the distance between Sarah and Kevin became both a challenge and a reminder of how much they meant to each other. Kevin had moved to Chicago, and although they talked every day, the absence of his presence was something Sarah had to learn to live with. There were days when she missed him so much it hurt, and days when she wondered if they were fooling themselves, trying to make something work that was so far from easy. But there were also moments when she knew, deep down, that what they shared was worth fighting for. Kevin visited whenever he could, and Sarah did the same, flying to Chicago for weekends when her schedule allowed. They made it work, but it wasn't without its struggles. The long-distance relationship tested their patience, their trust, and their commitment. Yet, through it all, Sarah found herself growing in ways she hadn't expected. She was learning to trust Kevin completely, and for the first time in a long time, she was also learning to trust herself. One evening, as she sat in her apartment, Sarah received a call from Kevin. It had been one of those tough weeks. Work had been draining, and the loneliness of missing him had been heavy on her heart. But hearing his voice always brought a sense of calm. Hey, Kevin said, his voice warm and familiar. How's everything going? It's been a rough week, Sarah replied, her tone lighter now that she could hear him. I miss you more than I care to admit. How about you? I miss you too, Kevin said. But I've been doing a lot of thinking lately, and I think it's time I make a decision. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. A decision? What do you mean? Kevin paused for a moment. I've been thinking about us, about the future. I know the distance is hard, but I don't want to keep living this way, not when I know what I want. And what I want is you. I want to be with you, Sarah. Her breath caught in her throat. She wasn't sure what to say. The last few months had been filled with uncertainty, and now, hearing Kevin speak with such certainty, she realized just how much she wanted the same thing. I want that too, Kevin, she whispered, her voice soft but filled with emotion. I don't want to keep waiting. I want to be with you. There was a brief silence on the other end before Kevin spoke again, his words full of conviction. Then, let's make it happen. I've been thinking about it for a while, and I've decided to move back. I want to be closer to you, to build something real together. I'm coming back to stay, Sarah. I want to be with you, not just for weekends, but every day. Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as she processed his words. She had never imagined it could be so simple, but somehow, Kevin had made the decision for them both. She had been afraid that their relationship would fall apart with the distance, but instead, it had only made them stronger. I don't know what to say, she replied, her voice trembling with joy. You're coming back? Really? Really? Kevin said, laughter in his voice. I'm done with the distance, done with being apart. I want to build a life with you, Sarah. I want to be with you for the long haul. Will you let me? Sarah felt a wave of relief wash over her. All the doubts, all the fears, suddenly seemed so small in comparison to the love they shared. She had never been so sure of anything in her life. Yes, she said softly, her voice filled with tears of happiness. Yes, I want that too. The following months were filled with excitement and anticipation as Kevin prepared to move back. Sarah helped him find a place, and together, they began to make plans for their future. It wasn't always easy, but they were in it together, and that was all that mattered. When Kevin finally moved back to the city, it felt like a dream. They spent their first evening together, just the two of them, cooking dinner in Sarah's apartment. It was simple, but it felt like everything had come full circle. They were no longer separated by miles and time zones. They were building a life side by side, and it felt like the start of something beautiful. As they sat together, enjoying the quiet comfort of each other's presence, Sarah looked at Kevin, her heart full. "I can't believe you're really here," she said softly. Kevin smiled, his hand reaching for hers. "I'm not going anywhere. I'm home, Sarah. I'm finally home." And in that moment, Sarah knew that whatever challenges the future held, they would face them together. Their love had survived the distance, and now, it was stronger than ever. She had found something real, something worth fighting for. And for the first time in a long time, she felt truly at home. Thank you for following Sarah and Kevin's journey. Stay tuned for more stories that remind us all that love, no matter the distance, can always find its way.